John Wick Chapter 4 is out in cinemas on March the 24th. To prepare for the fourth film in the John Wick franchise, we're reviewing the first three films. Today we recap and review John Wick Chapter 2. Warning, there will be full spoilers for Chapter 2 ahead. Let's get straight into it. Plot. John Wick retrieves his stolen car and settles his dispute, let's call it, with the Tarasov family, concluding events from John Wick 1. He then concretes over his guns and black suit and rests with his new dog, ready to again enter a peaceful retirement. But straight away he is brought back into his past life when his doorbell rings.
And I knock on her door and I say, Carol! Carol!
And he is visited by Santino D'Antonio, who years ago helped him to complete the mission that bought his freedom from the underworld and allowed him to retire and marry Helen. Back in the day, John had vowed a blood oath marker. That means John must do something for D'Antonio in return for how D'Antonio helped him all those years ago. John refuses D'Antonio's request to fulfill his marker obligation, and after D'Antonio leaves, he fires a grenade launcher at John's home and destroys it. John grieves the loss of his house, predominantly the photos of him and his wife, which are now burnt to a crisp. John visits a Continental Hotel, which is a hotel for the criminal underworld, where inside the hotel, no criminal activity can be conducted. He speaks to the Continental's manager, Winston, and realises that he must fulfill the marker request that D'Antonio wants him to complete. John Wick visits D'Antonio in a museum that is holding his art gala, and John accepts D'Antonio's task, which is to kill his sister Gianna, so D'Antonio can take her place and sit at the high table. The high table comprises of 12 crime bosses that run the world's organised criminal activities. John heads to Rome, kills Gianna, and is then double-crossed by D'Antonio, who first sends henchmen and Ares, his mute assassin, and then puts a $7 million bounty on John Wick's head. John Wick has to fight almost every assassin who wants to capitalise on the bounty in New York, and whilst on the run he finds a Bowery King, a master of whisperers who uses a network of homeless men as spies and assassins. The Bowery King and his homeless network get John to D'Antonio's art gala, and John takes down D'Antonio's guards, including Ares. D'Antonio retreats to the Continental, using it as a sanctuary, as it is forbidden to kill or harm any other person inside the grounds of the hotel, and John later arrives at the Continental too. John heads to the lounge, and despite Winston's warnings, he shoots D'Antonio in the head. The film ends with Winston telling John that he has been excommunicado, meaning he no longer can visit the Continental, and that he will be hunted for breaking the High Council's rules. A really good story, setting up the impossible fight John Wick now has on his hands for Chapter 3. A step up from the original John Wick, with improved car crashes, gung fu, and better violence than the original. Plot scores 8 out of 10. Entertainment value. The mythology of the John Wick world plays an essential part in Chapter 2. In the original film, the larger underworld mythos was alluded to with the Continental's rules and the assassin Miss Perkins' execution for breaking the rules at the end of the first film. Chapter 2 fully explores this mythos and is central to the film's plot. It fully delivers on the intrigue that was stirred in the original film. With the elaboration of the Continental's rules, the introduction of the High Council, and the procedures and logistics that guide organised crime in the John Wick universe. It was all interesting and fresh, and is one of the rare sequels that transcends the original film. One negative I do have about Chapter 2 is that although it's now tradition for characters to big up John Wick, which can be fun, it's done a bit too much.
John Wick, the man, the myth, the legend.
It reminds me of the Fast and Furious franchise, where most of the dialogue is about boosting up Vin Diesel's character by saying he's the best every other sentence. It's certainly not as bad as that, but it occurs a bit too often for my liking. Leaving that aside, John Wick Chapter 2 is utterly brilliant action that delivers with what it sets out to achieve. For entertainment value, John Wick Chapter 2 scores 8 out of 10. Characters and performances. Keanu Reeves is as cold as ice. He probably has under 50 words of dialogue, but that's fine. His look, especially in his black turtleneck, is great, and his stunt work, which apparently Keanu did 95% of the stunts for the film, is really good. Well-timed forward rolls, a fantastic reload, which I will elaborate on later, and the intermittent, clunky, cheesy line. Keanu provides a physical performance that's probably his best yet. His brooding portrayal of Mr. Wick is a good one. Laurence Fishburne as the Bowery King is interesting, and like Ian McShane, although helping John, you don't doubt their morals are less than perfect, and they could betray or sacrifice John for their own self-interest at any point. Riccardo Scamarcio as the antagonist D'Antonio. He's not really all that interesting. D'Antonio's motivation is to become one of the 12 High Council members, but I would have liked to have seen his relationship with John develop more. By referring to their past lives, where they knew each other and worked together, perhaps a flashback of the two would have added depth to D'Antonio. Ruby Rose as Ares. The character's signing adds an interesting aspect to the scene she's in, differing her relationship with John and D'Antonio. Her facial expressions and signing speak 1,000 words. Good performance, although the hair does make her look like a teenage boy in some scenes. Characters and performances score 8 out of 10. Visuals. The visuals are fantastic. The scenes in the Colosseum take the best aspect from the Red Circle nightclub in the original and add scale and splendour to the Colosseum sequences. The signing from the mute assassin Ares gives the film a good excuse to feature its comic book captions more, which are used stylishly and give the film an almost tongue-in-cheek, distinctive characteristic that I for one enjoy. The mirror scenes in the art museum are really beautiful and feature innovative directing. I can imagine there must have been a lot of preparing going into the filming of these mirror scenes, as the angles and geography has to be perfect, or else it will be confusing and hard to follow. The choreography is phenomenal, and out of the 10 or more fight scenes, only 2 went on for a bit longer than I needed to. The rest were all gripping and suspenseful. Visuals score 8 out of 10. Sound. The score is great. John Wick most definitely found its musical style and it works. The dark-sounding electronic beats and the occasional overpowering female vocals are great. The echoing operatic song Plastic Heart in the Colosseum works wonderfully, when it's intercut with John Wick breaking into the Colosseum and laying weapons strategically in the catacombs below. Like all the other parts of the film, the soundtrack is improved upon from the original to deliver a more Hollywood dramatic score. Sound scores 8 out of 10. Ending. Winston telling John that he is excommunicado, which yes, is a brilliantly silly word that Ian McShane says with the frivolity it deserves. And then John walking away whilst the phones of everyone he passes rings out, insinuating that they have all been notified of his excommunicado status. He then breaks out into a run, which perhaps even surpasses Tom Cruise's run in Mission Impossible, and a fantastic tune, John Wick's Reckoning, plays out. A top ending that makes you want to watch Chapter 3 as soon as you can. Ending scores 8 out of 10. Bonus points. Very rarely do I add bonus points for something so memorable in a movie that it deserves to be singled out and awarded a bonus point. But John Wick Chapter 2 is one of those rare occasions. Chapter 2 receives a bonus point for the best reload in film history. Here it is. It's just fantastic. One more time. His casual unloading, throwing the empty clip to the side, and then the classy reload is stunning. I have no idea if that's a good way to reload a gun, but it easily is the best reload I've ever seen on film. Rating. Overall, my rating for John Wick Chapter 1 is 82%. Film leaderboard. Standing high and mighty in joint third place, John Wick Chapter 2 is a blast. Violent action combined with a great score and even better choreography. For the action-adventure genre, Chapter 2 is in second place, just under Todd Phillips' A Batman. John Wick has a ceiling that I think it's reached in the lower 80% mark, as it is essentially a 2-hour fight scene. And although the film is brilliant at fight scenes, it is just action schlock. My rating of 82% is higher than the IMDb user rating of 7.4 out of 10, but lower than a Rotten Tomatoes score, which is at 89% for the critics rating and 85% for the audience score, so universally a well-liked film. John Wick 2 outscores the original, which stands at 86% for the Rotten Tomatoes critic rating and 81% for the audience score. Next week, we will be reviewing John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum, followed by Chapter 4 the week after, on the 24th of March, which is the movie's release date. Also this weekend, we're reviewing Adam Driver's dinosaur sci-fi film 65, and later this month, Shazam 2 and Dungeons & Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves. On the TV front, we are covering Star Wars The Bad Batch Season 2 and The Mandalorian Season 3. So if you enjoyed this video, then perhaps consider subscribing to the channel. See you again.